Hello and thanks for purchasing my Twilight Tales Toolbox for Procreate artists. I'm Irina Young of Busy Studio, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to draw this cute whimsical bird using the brushes from the set. You can use your artwork for many creative projects, including greeting cards, stickers, wall art, and many more. Make sure you've got the Twilight canvases, brushes, and the color palette downloaded and installed. Follow me on Instagram at MyBusyMay, and please share your art you've created using Procreate brushes and tag me in your posts. And let's begin. So as you can see, I've got my canvas open. This is one of the canvases you get in the set. It's called BusyMay Canvas 2. So if you open it, you can see the structure of the layers here. So you can see this group texture layers. If you expand it, you can see that I've created a unique mixture of different textures that will provide this authentic artistic effect for your painting. That's why they are locked. However, if you unlock it, very simple, you can adjust it the way you would like it to be, lighter, darker, etc. So you can see there is a layer called paint here and the layer called sketch here. The layer which is called sketch here is above the texture layers, because for the sketch we don't really need the application of these textures. However, for our paint we do need the textures, that's why it's underneath. So what I usually do to start with, I add a little bit of toning to my artwork, because I don't really like it to be as white as that. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a new layer and put it right underneath the paint here layer, and then I'm gonna choose milky color and add it to my canvas. I'm going to reduce the opacity a little bit, so there is just only a tiny tint of like this yellowish, creamy, off-white color, so it's not like pure snow white. However, it's obviously personal choice. If you prefer your canvas to be pure white, go ahead, you're the artist. So next step, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make sure that I'm on sketch here layer, and I'm going to select, see this category of brushes, Twilight stamps. I'm going to choose this sketch because in this tutorial we are painting this whimsical bird, and it doesn't matter at this stage what color you choose, but I would choose like some darker color. And what I'm going to do, I'm just gonna stamp our bird here, and I'm gonna resize it slightly. Remember, it's just a sketch. It's just the guidelines for you, if you wish, if you don't want to sketch yourself. And I immediately reduce the opacity here, so all this line do not interfere with my actual painting. And then I'll go back to this layer, which is called paint here, and I'm going to paint on this very layer. So our next step is the exciting part. So we're going to start filling our bird with colors. I usually call it like mapping the main shapes, different colors. So for this step, I'm going to choose the TT Filler 6 brush. TT stands for Twilight Tales, that's the name of the collection. And from the Brighted Color palette, I'm going to use this shade of brown. It's the very first color in the palette. So I'm going to take the brush And I'm gonna start filling the main shape. The opacity is 100%, and I might just reduce the size of the brush to be able to paint over the smaller areas. However, in most cases, I like my characters to have this fluffy edge. That's why I'm just gonna try and keep it fairly large. And that's how I'm gonna fill out the main shape of our bird. I'm gonna reduce a little bit. I usually keep adjusting the size and the opacity of my brushes on the go. The wing is gonna be a different color. That's why I'm not too precious about filling it. The opacity still stays 100%. So it's in the peak brush. Don't be too precious, just fill with color. So that's it. Just a reminder, paint here, that's the layer you want to be on under the texture, because look, if I switch the texture off, you can see that it's all flat and too smooth, but with the texture it's all nice and like vintagey. Okay, right, so let's keep mapping the main shapes. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a new layer above our body shape layer. I can use the same TT Filler 6 brush, but I'm going to reduce the opacity a little bit. And the color I'm going to choose is this yellowish brown from the color palette. And I'm just going to go ahead and color in the wing shape. Going forward, you'll probably see that you're not gonna see a lot of this color of the wing. However, we need this shape to be able to attach other details. You'll see what I mean going forward. So that's our wing. Let's create a new layer and color in the beak and the feet. So I'm choosing even lighter, this like beigey color from the color palette. Using the same brush, I'm just gonna go ahead and color in the beak of our bird. Very light creamy color, almost same color as our canvas on the background. However, we're gonna add some details going forward, so it will definitely stand out much more. I'm going to reduce the size a little bit and paint the little feet, color in rather. Don't worry that it looks a little bit rough right now. We're going to improve it going forward. That's just our mapping the main shapes. So that's the entire body and feet and beak mapped. Right, next step is the eye. On this step I would like to dwell just a tiny bit more, because normally I draw that kind of eye, which is really not a bird's eye, but I tend to give all my animals and birds this cheeky eye. I think it adds this whimsical effect to it. However, you don't have to do that. You can just paint more or less normal bird eye, which I'm going to show you quickly as well. So what I'm going to do, first I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to still use filler TT filler 6 brush, and I'm going to choose pure white color. So that's going to be the color of our eyes, white. And I'm going to go ahead and paint over it, creating the main shape. And let's draw a pupil as well. For this, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to use a clipping mask. So the layer is like sort of attached to our eyes white. For this purpose, I'm going to use the brush called TT Details 4. And I'm going to increase the size to maximum. And for the color, I'm going to take this darkest color in the color palette, and I'm just going to fill it in with color. Might reduce the opacity a little bit just to make the edges slightly sharper. Obviously, this eye needs a little bit more work, but in essence, the main shapes are mapped. I'm going to create another clipping mask, and I'm going to add a few highlights. So for this, I'm going to use this fluffy detail 2 brush. I'm going to use pure white color, and I'm going to reduce the opacity to maybe 70%, and I'm just going to add just a tiny bit of the highlight here. And then I'm going to increase the opacity to 100%, reduce the size, and I'm going to just, on the new layer, I'm just going to draw the main highlight. So that's basically the eye I usually give my characters. However, I'm going to quickly show you, if you don't want to use that kind of eye, you can draw like a normal bird's eye. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to group this eye of mine, I'm going to rename it. I'm going to name it I1, and I'm going to switch the visibility of this group. And now I'm going to create, I'm going to show you how to make a normal bird's eye, that usually like more sort of realistic type. Well, there is nothing realistic about this bird, of course. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to take again the brush for back to fillers. I'm going to take this, like the thickest TT filler brush. I'm going to take the pure white color, and I'm going to make a circle. Increase the size a little bit. This circle. See, I'm deliberately not making a perfect circle because I just like my characters to be slightly rough around the edges. And I might reduce the opacity just a tiny bit of this layer because it appears to be slightly too bright. And now I'm going to create a new layer. In this case, there is no need to create a clipping mask. I'm going to take the details brush and TT detail 4. I'm going to take the darkest color from the palette, and I'm going to create a big circle on the new layer. Almost actually, if you look at the bird's eye, you can see that very often there is like this little trim around the eye. So I'm going to make my pupil almost as big as this white area around it. Just going to adjust it a little bit. And I'm going to just the same add the highlights. I'm going to add the new layer. And I'm going to take TT Detail 2 brush. I'm going to take pure white color and reduce the opacity. And just exactly same way as we did with the Whimsical eye. We're going to add the highlight of the eye and the big highlight here. So that's sort of like more normal bird eye. I'm gonna group it into the same, into one group. So it's basically up to you which eye you would like, which type of eye you would like to use. But we're gonna still do some work on the eye later on. But at the moment, just leave it the way it is. Right, so looking at our mapped shapes right now, it seems to me that the color of the bird's body is a little bit too flat, too even. And to give it like, as a traditional watercolor artist, I prefer like all kinds of blooms, color transitions, one color is bleeding to another. So that's why I created this brush, which comes as a bonus in this pack. You can find it in Twilight Fillers brush set, and it's called Multicolor. So I'll show you what this brush does. So if I increase the opacity and size, so if you open classic colors, and you can see there are two color swatches here. So for example, if I choose the first color, this dark teal, and the other one, this sort of like burgundy color, let's see what's gonna happen. Look what this brush is doing. Or if you, for example, swap like that, see, it's sort of like burgundy with a little bit of teal on the shade. Don't know if you can see it. So oops, let's never do that, never draw on the same layer. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna experiment. I'm gonna create a new layer right above our main body shape. I'm gonna create a clipping mask. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this brush. I think this burgundy color is slightly too dark, so I'm gonna choose this pinkish one. And for the greenish, I'm gonna use this light teal one. And let's see. And I'm just gonna slightly paint over the bird's body. So you see, there is like slight shades of pink and teal appeared here. However, the fun part is experiment with blending modes. Let's see what's going to happen if we change it to multiply, to darken. Nothing happens with the darken and color burn. You can play with the opacity, of course, but color burn is probably not the one to use. I like normal, and oh, I like overlay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it on overlay. It's very subtle. However, you can see how our flat bird just got slightly more interesting. Now let's keep working on the bird's body. So next step, I'm gonna add some lighter shade to the breast. So for this, I'm gonna create a clipping mask. I'm gonna use the TT Texturizer 2 brush. And the color I'm gonna choose is, I'm gonna try this off-white color. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna maybe try and use two colors. And I'm gonna just make our birdie's breast a little bit lighter. And maybe the bottom of the tail as well, just when we paint feathers later. Now I'm gonna choose pure white color, reduce the opacity, and just add some lighter shade here with our texture brush. Let's switch the sketch off and see. That's looking very good already. Sketch back on. I might actually reduce the opacity a little bit more. Okay, now it's time to work on our wing. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a new layer, create clipping mask above our wing layer. And I'm gonna choose the brush multicolor, the same we used for the body. And I'm gonna choose two color samples, this like light beige and pinkish one. And with gentle strokes, I'm gonna go over our wing. Just experiment with different colors, different the strength of pressure of the Apple Pencil. And of course, try to change the blending mode. See, like some of them are too bright, some of them are too dark, too grungy looking. So we are looking for a more subtle effect here. So I'm gonna choose normal, just the way it is. And now, remember, we're gonna cover it with new details, so let's not be too precious on the perfection. So I'm gonna create a new layer as a clipping mask, and I'm gonna choose the filler brush, which is TT Filler 2. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create feather-like shapes, like on top of the wings. As you know, like the bird structure, the wing structure is like two short layers on top, then longer layers in the middle, and the longest layers in the bottom. So we're gonna create them one by one, one under another. So I'm gonna choose that grayish teal color. What I'm gonna do on our new layer, I'm gonna paint feather-like shapes. Very rough. Remember, it's not a realistic bird we are drawing, painting. So it's just gonna be that type of shapes. We're gonna work on more details later, but at the moment we need to map. Remember this word mapping, main shapes. So that now we're mapping the shortest feathers with this teal color. Well, I think that looks pretty good. So yeah, so that's the shortest layer, and that's on top. Second layer, we're gonna create underneath. So we're gonna choose this nice burgundy color, and we're gonna paint slightly longer feather shapes with the TT Filler Brush 5. Yes, nice color. And let's see how it's gonna look. Yep. That's it. So they are longer. They're different colors, which gives our bird this magic, whimsical feel. Again, Don't be too precise, no perfection, just overall feather shapes. Right, so this is our burgundy layer done of the feathers, and the third one is going to be underneath the burgundy layer, the longest feathers. And I'm going to pick just slightly different brush. It's TT Filler 4. I'm going to choose this orangey brown color because I think it matches this color combination best. And what I'm going to do again, reduce the size if you need to, reduce the opacity. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to gently draw the longer feather shape with very light pressure, light touch. It's bright enough, but just following these gentle elongated shapes with our brush. You see I'm darkening the end of our feathers. We will obviously work on it a little bit later, on the later stages, but at the moment this detailing, see, like a little bit of shade. Don't do too much shade because that's not the type of feel, not the style we're after, but just these gentle touches. That's it. Done. So the main details are mapped, and it gets us a good base for the next sort of like layering of other details. We're obviously gonna layer some lighter details, some darker details, but at the moment this is what we've achieved, which is already looking great. So moving on to the next stage, what we're gonna do now, we're gonna add some darker emphasis to our wing to make it look again less flat, more interesting, more artistic. For that, we're going to create a new layer and change the blending mode to multiply. And first of all, we're going to start working on that very top layer with shorter feathers. And for that, we're going to use one of the Twilight detail brushes, which is TT Detail 7. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that brush, and I'm going to gently paint over that area. So in terms of the color, because the blending mode is now changed to multiple, you can use exactly same color as you used to create these basic shapes of the shorter feathers, and the multiply mode automatically will make it darker. However, you can use a darker color, which also looks great. So I'm gonna stick to the same color as we used for the main shape. Only remember, change it to multiply mode to emphasize the darker areas and to reveal the texture coming through. So I'm gonna reduce the opacity, and I'm going to just slightly increase the brush size. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to gently, with very gentle touches and stroke, paint over our teal area of the shorter feathers. Increase the size if necessary, and just gently cover with darker color. Remember, you can always reduce the layer opacity if you think it's way too intense, which happens a lot to me, for example, when I realize it becomes too dramatic, which at the moment I don't really want to achieve this overly dramatic effect. That's why I barely touch the surface of my iPad with my Apple Pencil. But at the same time, I want it to be this like little shades. I want it to be quite visible. Just remember, we are not after like source of light and natural shading, etc. That's not the style we are going for. And now off to the next layer. We are staying on the same layer with multiply mode, but we're gonna grab this burgundy color which we used for our longer feathers, second layer of longer feathers. And because, as I said before, the blending mode is multiply, the color is gonna come through as darker color. Exactly with the same style, with the same manner, I'm gently like marking the feathers area, emphasizing that it's not just one mass of feathers, but each feather comes individually, nicely layered. And and finally I'm gonna try, you see, I think this yellowish color is way too bright. That's why I'm gonna grab just slightly muted grayish brown color for this, like the very last longest feathers. However, please remember you are staying on the same layer with the multiply mode, making this little shades as feathers overlap each other, and that's why you can like put a little hint of shading on top of it. But again, no strict rules. We are not an academic drawing class here. We're not gonna do like natural source of light, etc. It's so like freehand movement, little bit of like cross hatching. Like imagine if you ever used colored pencil for like cross hatching, for coloring, for drawing. That's exactly the effect we are after. Gentle touches, gentle areas. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna add a little bit more sharper details to our wing. Not too sharp. So I'm going to create a new layer, turn the blending mode into linear burn, just to try if it's gonna work. The brush I'm gonna grab is the texturizer, texturizer 3. I'm using same brownish gray color, which I used in the previous step for the longer feather set. So right now I'm just gonna add here and there a little bit of darker areas of the feathers with that grainy texturizer. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. And now I'm gonna create a new layer and change the blending mode to multiply. And the brush I'm gonna use is Detail, TT Detail 1. It's actually one of my favorite brushes in the set because it's like a dual brush, you see. It creates a nice like semi-solid monoline, yet it's got this little splattering of paint around it. So with this brush, I'm gonna darken even more areas, particularly between the feathers. I'm darkening and sharpening some edges at the same time. Just make sure not to make it too sharp because that's not the look we're going for. So yeah, I'm adding this shade. I'm still working with the same color because at this stage it doesn't really matter what color it is, as long as it's one of the palette colors, because the blending mode is multiply and the darker color is revealed. So I'm going to reduce the opacity because I think it's becoming a little bit too dramatic. See, I'm constantly watching, making sure that I'm not overdoing it with darker areas, so it does become too dark. But I'm gonna darken this little edge of the wing, making it look slightly sharper, giving the wing some emphasis with the color. Still using same brush, and it's TT Detail 1. It's like following the feather shape, nice and gentle. I'm not pressing too hard. It's all nice and gentle touches of the pencil. That's it. And now what I'm gonna do next, I'm gonna add some lighter details to the feathers, because this whole artwork is a mixture and layering of lighter, darker details, textures. That's what makes it so authentic and unique and more finished. So what I'm gonna do now, just a little bit, just felt like it needs a tiny bit darker emphasis on the longer feathers. See, this color is beautiful. It gives this like vintage paper effect. And yeah, so what's important now, I'm gonna combine these layers because I feel like I'm not gonna edit this anymore. However, if we don't do it, we're gonna run out of adding the possibility of adding more layers to our artwork. That's why I flattened the group. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna grab the TT Detail 3 brush. It's a like scratch type pencil, and I'm gonna take a light, very light cream color, reduce the size of the brush, maybe, I don't know, I keep the opacity 100%, I can always reduce the opacity of the layer itself. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create this gentle pattern on the feathers, replicating, not quite replicating, but patterns similar to what you find on actual feathers or on some leaves, like these little veins. Very, very, very simple moves. You just draw, you just scratch with a scratch detail brush the center line of each feather, and you just pull these little strokes from the center of it to the edge of the feather. Try not to leave any gaps, because otherwise your artwork might look unfinished. Yeah, so I decided to reduce the opacity. No, I decided to change the blending mode to see how other blending modes would look like. So some make them disappear, these details. Some bring them up too strong, in my opinion. So this add blending mode, for example, is way too strong. So I'm probably gonna keep it either normal, or I quite like overlay. Yeah, let's see how. Oh, some turn them really dark, which is not what we are after. So what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna leave it a normal mode, because you see, like, the nature of this brush, because it's got this little discrepancy in it, this little gaps, it like brings the color through. So the layer underneath, it's this teal burgundy color, you can see it through. I really like this brush because it's like a real pencil. So as a traditional artist, I'm constantly trying to recreate digital tools that are as close as possible to traditional mediums. So yeah, I'm continuing scratching these details on the rest of my bird's shortest feathers. Doing it quickly, there is no need to dwell on this part for too long, as long as you do it neatly. So making sure that they are going more or less same direction. But again, they don't have to use your artistic license to just do it the way you want to do it. It's your artwork, you're the artist, so you decide what works best for you. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So now with the same brush, which is TT Detail 1, reducing the size slightly and reducing the opacity slightly, I'm gonna replicate this pattern, which I used on the shorter feathers, on our burgundy feathers. I'm still staying on the same layer. Yeah, so I'm just quickly, not dwelling too much on it, with gentle strokes, gentle touches. I'm just doing exactly same feather pattern on each feather. As for the longest feathers, I'm just gonna use the strokes, like this long strokes with the pencil, just to emphasize some texture and structure of the feathers, that they're not so flat. So I decided not to use this little veins, just to mix up different styles, which I think works for it quite well. And now we are back to darkening again. So I create a new layer right under our lighter details layer, and you'll see what I'm doing in a moment. So I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply again, as we know that it brings a darker color up. I'm going to choose a different brush, which is still in the detail group, which is TT Detail 2 brush, and I'm going to choose this darker teal color, reduce the opacity of the brush a little bit and the size, and I'm just gonna darken certain areas. Why I'm doing this? I'm doing this because I want to bring forward this whiter details, because I thought they looked a little bit flat. So you see now there is some texture to the whole shortest wing set. Yeah, see, like I'm almost randomly emphasizing these areas. It doesn't have to be precise. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to choose the darker burgundy color and do exactly the same, staying on the same layer on the multiply mode. I'm emphasizing some areas of the burgundy feathers, which bring the lighter details forward a little bit. And I quite like this effect. Yeah, that's looking much better. And now I'm gonna select not brown, but this purple violet grayish color, and it's like super gentle strokes I'm gonna add to our longest feather set, staying on the same layer. Just very gently, because I think there is quite a lot of darker areas. You don't want your artwork to look super exposed. That's why all these like blends should be very, very gradual and soft. So yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that. That's looking good. So our wing is ready. Looking very nice, looking very artistic. But what about the rest of the body? In comparison with the wing, it looks too flat. Yeah, now looking at it, I'm thinking maybe I've made it too pale overall. Anyway, it's got a nice texture though, but in this part, we're going to work on the body. So first of all, I would like to add some textures. So for that, I'm going to create a new layer, create a clipping mask, and the brush I'm going to use is one of the bonus brushes, which you can find in the stamps. They're called textures. See, I just made these bonus brushes for you. And the one I'm going to use is brush number 6. So it's a texture stamp. I'm going to use pure white color. I'm going to reduce the size of it. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use this type of motions, like literally gently hitting the iPad surface with the pencil tip, holding it vertically. And look what effect it creates. It gives you this felt effect that sometimes you get the toys, made of felt, and they've got this little fibers of white mixed with something darker, and the darker areas are coming through, and this white fluff is so nice and gentle. So that's the effect I kept in mind when I was creating this particular texture stamp brush, and I'm quite happy already with the way it looks. I'm going to just try and play around with the blending mode, just making sure that maybe something way too pale. I don't know. What do you think? Yeah, but certainly it still made it a little bit paler. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add some darker areas, but for that I'm gonna use another texture stamp brush, but this time it's texturizer too. But this time I'm gonna use some darker color. I've chosen this lilac gray, and I'm gonna create a clipping mask, and I'm gonna change the blending mode to multiply. And look what I'm gonna do, exactly with the same motions as I previously did. I'm gonna just stamp, sorry, I think that's the eraser I'm trying to use. Yeah, happens a lot. So I'm gonna use the brush now. I'm gonna increase the size of the brush, maybe reduce, like I'm gonna see how it works. And see, I'm doing this little stepping motions, and look how nicely it brings the previous texture forward. So you get even more of this felt effect, this fluff on our bird. So I'm not gonna follow any light and shade rules right now, nothing of the kind. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna emphasize some darker areas almost randomly, and you can see that it's so much better looking already. So it's bringing up the lighter areas, as opposed to the whole body being too pale. A little bit of darker under the wing, a little bit of like little stomps here and there, just like almost little clouds. Yeah, I quite like that. What else I'm going to try to do? I'm going to try and maybe add just slightly even more darker areas. I know, but I'm going to be really careful not to make it again overexposed. But I'm going to go back to Texturizer 2, which is like this featherish brush, which I think works just best for birds. And I'm going to use darker color again. I'm going to create clipping mask on the new layer. Again, I'm going to change the blending mode from normal, but this time it's going to be either linear burn or color burn. Just see what works best for you. I'm going to reduce the opacity and the size of the brush just a tiny bit. And look, I'm going to start like emphasizing literally like tiny corners. The head, very often heads are darker in birds, and tails, so I quite like to bring this effect to our artwork. I've put a little bit darker on the tail, and look how nice it all looks, and look how body now looks as the same unity with the wing, as opposed to the wing just standing out. Looking finished, and the body was unfinished. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to make it as a clipping mask again. And what I'm going to do, the brush I'm going to select this time is like probably like my favorite TT Detail one, this with this little paint splatters. And look what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add tiny scratchy strokes on the bird's body. Like, why I'm doing that? First of all, I'm a firm believer that the more textures you layer, combining blending modes, colors from dark to light, the more finished and the more authentic your piece becomes. And on the other hand, I really don't want the body of the bird look like it's too simple in comparison with the wing, because we've done so much work on the wing. Now it's time to bring up some, bring attention to the body a little bit of our bird and the head. Also, I think these tiny strokes, they work really good on animals and birds because they emphasize this little fluff. I know that we use the texture brush for that, but these tiny scratches, they give it even a stronger effect of like real feathers, real hairs, real fluff. And I think combining it with this quite like flat, almost folk style, it works really nice together. See, I'm just gonna add a little bit on the bird's breast. See how nice it looks already. A little bit around the eye. Just emphasizing the eye area. I know that we'll still go back to the eye and we'll work on it a little bit more, but at the moment it's kind of like, I think it's quite nice because remember it's a whimsical bird after all, so we've no aim to create it super realistic. So with these strokes, just you can add some like fluffy tufts here and there. It can only bring some magic to your bird. See, I'm adding a little bit of like feathery looking strokes around the breast. Don't worry looking a little bit too pale again, because to balance it, we're going to add some similar strokes, but in darker color, just to give it more volume, more texture, more detail. But meanwhile, I'm just going to work on this area a little bit more, like making this tiny fluffy feather slightly more visible, as opposed to just flat color wash, if you like. A little bit on the tail. On the tail, I'm going to make this long pencil strokes similar to the ones we made on the longer feathers on the wing, if you remember, in the previous step. So this time, I'm gonna add a little bit of darker tiny strokes. So for that, I'm gonna create a new layer, clipping mask. I'm gonna change the blending mode to multiply again. So with the same brush, with the reduced opacity of the brush a little bit, I'm gonna choose a darker color, again this purplish gray, and just maybe a little bit more reduced opacity so it's not too obvious. And I'm just gonna again touching gently the canvas with the tip of the pencil. I'm just gonna gently scratch the surface with that darker color. It's barely visible, however it gives this overall effect of multi-layer, like of properly finished artwork. A little bit on the head, a little bit around the eye, a little bit around the wing. Sometimes just like as long as the scratching, I just start almost like cross-hatching. If you've ever done like coloring book with coloring pencil, you'll know what I mean. You just start using your Apple Pencil with the same motion you use a colored pencil, coloring in. Yet don't forget to make your strokes really light, because you don't want like rough strokes, rough scratches, because they're gonna stand out for all the wrong reasons. That's why I'm doing that, like a little bit around the. I'm not gonna outline my bird, but just a tiny bit of like strokes resembling some shading. They're going to add some nice layering. So see how I'm using the pencil? I'm just like a colored pencil on the paper. Like children, almost like children use the colored pencil. And now I'm using longer strokes just for the pure purpose of mixing and matching different types of strokes. I'm gonna mix in different color, this reddish brown, which I think is gonna bring a little bit more depth to our bird. Just again with the same motions, like coloring book motions, going around, a little bit around the eye, a little bit on the tail, a little bit around the wing. Just with tiny motions, you can see that this different colors, yet quite similar, they create this lovely traditional media effect. Yeah. You can also work more on the body if you like, but I would say that's pretty much ready. Maybe I'm going to just work a little bit on the tail, just a tiny bit. So for that, I'm going to grab TT Detail 6 brush. I'm going to take the dark teal color, and I'm just going to gently color in, gently paint over the top of the bird's tail, basically representing the top feathers. And with lighter, thinner strokes, I'm going to emphasize the feathers underneath a darker layer. And yeah, I think that's pretty much done. That's our body matching the wing. It's all looking nice. Let's move on to the next step. So now when our bird is pretty much ready, I think I'm just going to do some work on the eye. Because you can see it's just too flat. There is no volume to it, no texture. And I'm not really happy with the sharp edge. I kind of want the eye to sink a little bit into the background of the body. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the eraser tool, and the brush I'm going to use is Twilight Detail, TT Details 2 brush. I'm going to reduce the size, and with gentle strokes, I'm just going to slightly erase the edges of this eye white. You can see that it's becoming slightly softer, and it gives this effect that the eye is sort of like sinking. So it's sort of a little bit not on the foreground, but moving a little bit on the background, if that makes sense. And now I'm going to create a new layer, set it on to multiply mode, and I'm going to use the TT Detail 6 brush. It's like a fluffier brush with like softer edges. And I'm going to choose a dark purple color, and with gentle strokes, everything, remember, just gentle strokes everywhere, almost everywhere. And I'm just going to work around the eye, giving it a little bit more definition. Yeah, it kind of brings the attention to the eye better for the right reasons. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. And what I'm also going to do, I'm going to add a little bit of eyeshadow, like almost like makeup. That's what I usually do for my characters. I add a little bit of eyeshadow depending on the color palette. It can be purple, lilac. In this case, see, it's kind of like this gentle, soft teal. But I think it gives this bird like naturally whimsical look, because remember, it's our whimsical bird. It does look like a bird from a fairy tale with this additional features. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the eye. I don't want to overdo it, so I think it's. I'm just gonna add maybe a little bit more of like this dark teal splashes of color here and there, just to unify the artwork together. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Also, I'm just going to quickly show you, in case you decided to go for a more realistic bird eye. Remember, we draw it in like 2 circles in the beginning of this tutorial. So the principle is basically the same. Oops, I've run out of layers, so I'm going to flatten my wing. And the principle is the same as with the whimsical eye. I'm going to create a new layer, change the blending mode to multiply, and I'm just going to work with the same brush. I'm going to work around the edges of the eyes just to make it more expressive, just for it to stand out a little bit more. Yeah, just with this soft teal color around the eye. So yeah, that's the eye ready. I'm going to go back to my whimsical eye. Now our bird is almost ready, so we've got the beak and the feet still to work on. That's the only sort of flat elements left. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create, I've run out of layer space. That's why I'm going to flatten the body, because I'm quite happy with the end result of it. I'm not going to edit it anymore. So I flattened the body. And now I'm going to work on the two remaining bird parts, which is the beak and the feet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new layer above our mapped shapes. I'm going to create a clipping mask. And of course, guess what? I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply. Seems like my favorite mode. And the brush I'm going to use is a TT Detail 2 brush with even like more fluffier texturized edges. And I'm going to use this soft brownish grayish color from the palette. I'm going to just adjust the size and opacity a little bit. Again, there is no strict rules. See yourself what works for you. You might want it darker. In my case, I just decided to add it very gently. And I'm going to just start working on the bottom part of our bird's beak and maybe just a tiny bit on top. However, again, the top thing is optional because the light comes from the top. Here comes the rule of the light source, because usually the top plane of the object is lit. However, again, it's your artwork. You decide what works for you best. So now I'm just going to change the color to slightly darker one. You can see that I chose this darker purple grayish ones. And I'm going to keep working with the same brush on the bottom part of the beak. See how the bottom part is now blending it? And I'm going to just work a little bit around the edges. See, it gives this featherish look. And you see that the beak is sort of like, has more depth. And now I'm going to choose this lovely orangey brown color, and just with gentle strokes with the same brush, I'm going to give this flat part of the beak, the lighter part, this gentle shade of yellowish reddish brown. I think that's working really nice. Without changing the brush again, to create the unity with the whole artwork, I'm going to just give the feet, tiny bird feet, this little color, and maybe even a little bit of pink, because usually like birds' feet, they can be various shades of brown and pink and even reddish, and I think that's that gives it a nice like homogeneous look. Now what I've noticed, guys, that after I've switched off the sketch layer, I've noticed that the edge of the beak is a little bit uneven. Not that I want it to be super sharp, but I just want to tidy it a little bit. For that, I'm going to use the eraser tool with the TT Detail 7 brush, and I'm just going to gently erase this unevenness. I still want to keep the beak rather soft. However, these little imperfections, I'm just gonna go with the eraser along the edge of the beak and making it just slightly more defined. Yeah, you can see like the very tip of the beak is becoming slightly more defined and becoming sharper. Same with the little feet and legs. I'm gonna work around. Yeah, see that the back foot is behind the body, so I'm just gonna delete the top of it, and I'm gonna just to fluff up the top of the leg. And yeah, I'm going back to my multiply layer. I'm gonna select the detail brush TT Detail 4, and I'm just gonna work on a slight precision of the beak and the feet. So you can see that I'm going to reduce the opacity, the size of the brush, and I'm just going to sort of like separate the upper part of the beak from the lower part. And you see like I'm drawing this line, almost making my whimsical bird smile, because why not? It's a magic fairy tale bird. See, it's kind of giving it this little smiley look. And I'm just going to work a little bit on the feet, adding a little bit of the darker shade and tone to them. I might just add this little detail, which you usually find on birds' feet, and just like a tiny shading in the bottom. However, I just want to pay your attention to the fact that it's still a flat illustration. We don't have the goal of creating a 3D realistic bird look. It's definitely not that. That's why I'm just not going to be too precious. I'm not going to dwell for too long on the feet, only just not to leave them flat. That's basically the main objective of it. Just this tiny details here and there, and voila, our bird is ready. So here is our bird ready, guys. Pretty much is a ready artwork. You can already use it as clip art, a sticker, a greeting card, a wall art. It will make a lovely gift for friends and family. So it's ready. Go ahead and use it. However, in this step, this final step, it's optional. I'm just going to show you what I normally do to my artwork, just as finishing touch. But again, it's up to you. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to grab some fluffy brush. So this time it's going to be filler brush, TT Filler 4, because it's got this fluffy edge. And I'm going to take this lovely pink color, and I'm actually going to even adjust it a little bit. And ta-da! I'm going to make this little blushy cheek. Yeah, that's what I do. I almost always give my characters this little blushy cheek. I'm absolutely obsessed. Why do I do that? I'm glad you asked. I really don't know why I do that, but I think it gives the character this whimsical, magical look again, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? You can try and experiment with blending mode. So see, I kind of like this color burn blending mode. You can duplicate the layer, reduce the opacity. Basically, I know it's not everyone's thing. See what works best for you. You can completely omit this step. It's not a must, just a nice wee idea for you. And another thing, guys, I would like to show you is what I normally do. See, in the stamp set, you not only have texture stamps and sketch stamps, but you also have decorative stamps. So I've added some decorative elements here so you can enhance your picture, your artwork, and I'm going to show you how. So what I've done, I've created, we're going to be using two brushes here, so there'll be two separate layers. So what I've done, I've created a new layer right underneath all the layers. So the decorative elements will be on the background of our bird. I'm going to increase the size of this brush to maximum. This is Deco 10 brush. And I'm going to choose the purple color, and I'm going to stamp it like that on the paper. After that, I'm just going to go ahead and resize it any way you want, position it any way you want. That's a good thing about those brushes. See how like we literally sat the bird down on this branch. I know it's not a tree branch, however, there is a tree branch stamp in the set, but it's already, see, it's giving a little bit more detail to the illustration. It's kind of, the bird is not sitting on an empty canvas anymore. And the other brush I'm going to use on a new layer again, it's Decor 11 brush. So that was Decor 10. This one is Decor 11. And the color I'm going to use is this lovely dusty teal. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to stamp it on the canvas. And I'm going to reposition and resize it probably a little bit. Yeah, I think it's going to be slightly smaller. I'm going to try and like rotate it a little bit to make sure it creates a nice complete composition. I'm going to erase a little bit of the like the bottom bit of it, so it's not like sticking out of the bird. See, now I think it looks a little bit too pale in comparison with the rest of the artwork. So you can see our bird and the first branch, they both look quite bright, quite deep. So I'm going to duplicate the second branch layer. See, it's kind of, despite the fact that it's a line work, it's becoming a little bit more bright, and I think that's better. And yeah, I think it gives this our illustration a nice composition. And what I'm going to do now is, see, remember how we added this nice milky color to our canvas in the very beginning of this tutorial. Now I'm just going to play around with the adjustments of the opacity. See how when I reduce the opacity, it's a little bit grayish. When I increase the opacity, it becomes like more yellowish, and I really like it. It gives our paper this vintagey, crafty look, and I think I'm going to keep the opacity to 100%. And yeah, and guys, let's take a moment and appreciate the textures of our canvas. See, when you switch it off, I know we gave a lot of lovely details, which looks great, but it's still a little bit too digital. But look how you switch it back on, this lovely, delicious texture. Look at that. You can never tell if it's a digital artwork or traditional media. So guys, that's it. That was the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for purchasing the brushes. And please share your artwork on my Instagram. Tag me on Instagram. Follow me on my Instagram at mybusymay. And tag me when you create your artwork. I'd love to see your creation. I love people using my brushes to create their masterpieces. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and see you later. Bye.